Hey, I'm doing this video in response to a request from one of my lovely subscribers, namely NemoUtopian, who wondered about what he called the obsession with the perpetual virginity of Mary, the mother of Jesus. In my text response to NemoUtopian, I mentioned that the month of May is approaching, and a video about Mary would be seasonally appropriate since, for Roman Catholics at least, May is a month traditionally dedicated to Mary. It even comes with a major devotional ceremony, namely the May procession, or May crowning. Early in May, Catholics dress up in their Sunday best, usually what they wore on Easter, as we see on these young people here. Children making their first communion that year will usually wear their first communion outfits, and they have a procession with flowers and songs. The event culminates with the placement of a flower crown on a statue of Mary, and then this little schmaltzy song gets sung.
O Mary, we crown thee with blossoms today. We love the angels, we love the May. O Mary, we crown thee with blossoms today. We love the angels, we love the May.
Of course, this whole thing has its roots in Greek and Roman mythology and religious practice. For example, in Roman mythology, Flora was the goddess of flowers and blossoms, and surprise, she was celebrated in May. In Greek mythology, it was the fertility goddess Artemis. As the writer of Ecclesiastes correctly observed, there is nothing new under the sun. Behind me, by the way, is the column of the Immaculata in Rome. I used to know how to say that in Italian, but I've forgotten. Anyway, it's located near the famous Spanish Steps. This, of course, commemorates another Catholic idea about Mary, namely that she was immaculately conceived. That is to say, conceived without original sin. Some people mistake the Immaculate Conception for the virginal conception of Jesus, but they're not the same thing. That, however, is a topic for another day. In this video, the topic is Mary's virginity. When talking about Mary's virginity, there are three things at issue. First, Mary being a virgin at the time of Jesus' conception. Second, Mary remaining intact, so to speak, while giving birth to Jesus. And third, Mary remaining a virgin after Jesus' birth and for the rest of her life. Let's look at each of these in turn.
She's a good girl.
Of the 27 books that comprise the New Testament, 2 of them make the claim that Mary was a virgin at the time of Jesus' conception, namely the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. The rest of the New Testament is silent about the matter. Paul mentions Jesus' birth only once in his letter to the Galatians, where he says Jesus was, quote, born of a woman. Interestingly, the Greek word Paul used, and that's translated woman in this passage, is gyune, which means woman. There was a Greek word for virgin, namely parthenos, which is used, for example, in Luke 1:27, which tells us that God sent the angel Gabriel to have a chat with a virgin, parthenos, engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, and of the descendants of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. Paul knew the word parthenos. He used it 6 times in his other letters, but he does not use it in reference to Mary, the mother of Jesus. It's my opinion that Paul knew nothing of the belief that Jesus was born of a virgin, but that also is a topic for another video. The proposition that Mary was a virgin at the time of Jesus' conception is found in the New Testament, and therefore this was believed by at least some in the Christian communities of the first century. And, of course, most Christians today believe, or at least profess, the same thing.
But if you see me, baby, you'll see that nothing's broken.
The Catholic Church teaches that Mary's virginity remained intact while she was giving birth to Jesus. In Lumen Gentium, the Church's dogmatic constitution, which is one of the documents that came out of the Second Vatican Council, the Church claims that, quote, the birth of our Lord did not diminish his mother's virginal integrity, but sanctified it. The term virgin birth actually refers to this, and not to the virginal conception of Jesus. Of course, the New Testament says nothing about this. Its earliest articulation, so far as I can tell, was in a 2nd century document that has come to be called the Protoevangelium of James. Among other things, the Protoevangelium offers some details of Jesus' birth that are not found in either Matthew or Luke, including an odd part where as Mary is giving birth to Jesus, there's an extremely bright light, presumably coming from the baby being born. This idea that the baby Jesus gave off light found expression in Christian art for a very long time. Anyway, then a midwife and her friend Salome show up, challenging Mary about her virginity. And in one of the funnier lines in the story, Salome defiantly declares, "As the Lord my God lives, unless I thrust my finger and search the parts, I will not believe that a virgin has brought forth." Mary submits to a digital examination. The text continues, and Salome put in her finger and cried out, "Woe is me, for my iniquity and my unbelief." Then Salome's examining hand fell off. I've put a link to the Protoevangelium of James to the right of the screen here. The non-canonical Gospels and texts often make for wildly entertaining reading, and this one is no exception. Anyway, the idea that Mary's virginity remained intact through the process of giving birth to Jesus began to catch on. It received its first formal recognition by church authorities at the Synod of Milan in 390 CE. Lest anyone conclude that this is strictly a Roman Catholic idea, Eastern Catholics and the Orthodox also adhere to it. For example, there's a prayer in the Byzantine liturgy that says, in the voice of Mary speaking to Jesus, "As thou hast found my womb, so thou hast left it." Why did this idea catch on? Well, for a number of reasons, but as the brilliant Father Richard McBrien notes in his classic Catholicism, a critical tool for any student of Catholicism in particular and Christianity in general, I've put a link to the right of the screen where one can pick it up, the development, quote, coincided with a newly positive assessment of virginity. Of course, this has its roots in the preference Paul articulates for virginity in 1 Corinthians 7, where he describes marriage as, quote, concession that one undertakes, quote, because of immoralities and because one, quote, does not have self-control. By contrast, virgins and the unmarried are, quote, concerned about the things of the Lord and are, quote, holy in both body and spirit. One won't hear this passage read at any Christian weddings, I can assure you. By the way, next time someone is blathering on about family values and traditional marriage in the Bible, direct his or her attention to 1 Corinthians 7. It's all a concession for those sex-obsessed heterosexuals who can't keep their nasty urges under control. So it seems I've nearly come to time. I'll have to finish this up in a part 2, where I'll start by taking up the third component of this, which is Mary's perpetual virginity. That is to say, her virginity after Jesus was born. See you there. Thanks.